So let me get this straight because it's really confusing. You campaign for tough immigration policies. You support mass deportation. You chant law and order. You vote for the man promising the biggest immigration crackdown in modern history, which is President Trump. Then one day you realize people from your own community are facing deportation too. That's not political theory. That's not Twitter debate. That's real families, real fear, real consequences. Today we'll be talking about Cuban American, especially mainly in Miami, who strongly supported Trump for years. A lot of that support wasn't random. It came from deep history. Many Cuban families fled communism. They carried generational trauma. So when Trump spoke hard against socialism, it resonated. When he promised strong borders and strict immigration enforcement, some saw that as strength, as protection. But here is where it gets complicated. For decades, Cuban immigrants were treated differently under US policy. There was a long-standing belief that Cuban had a unique pathway, a kind of political exemption because of Cold War history. That belief created something powerful, a sense that we are not the same as other immigrants. So when mass deportation became the message, some people assumed it applied to others, not them, not their families. But immigration enforcement doesn't work off vibe. It works off policy. This conversation isn't about attacking anyone. It's about accountability, expectation, and how politics feel when it moves from speeches to real life. Welcome back to Chat with Faith. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell. Credit goes to the original creator for every single clip used in this episode. We've got some more clips and conversation coming your way, so stay tuned. Let's chat.
The New York Times yesterday released this article. To their shock, right? Cubans in Florida are being deported in record numbers. Just last year, the Trump administration repatriated, aka deported, more than 1,600 Cubans back to Cuba. Now, for context, that is double the number of Cubans who were deported in 2024. And in the years that Trump has been president, he has sent more Cubans back than his three predecessors. And that's not mentioning all the Cubans that have been deported to Mexico, to places in Africa, to countries all over Latin America and the world because they had some sort of criminal conviction and the Cuban government refused to accept them back into Cuba. Now, what's crazy is that polls suggest that most Cuban American registered voters, who obviously tend to be Republican, continue to support Donald Trump. But there has been a growing amount of unease throughout the community with this situation. Growing unease in the community, but they still continue to support Donald Trump regardless of their family members, their friends, their neighbors being deported back to the Cuban dictatorship, right? Or to random countries across the entire world for convictions that these folks had in the 80s, 90s, 70s, right? And what's funny to me is the headline, right? To their shock, Cubans in Florida are being deported in record numbers, because it's the reality, right? This is a shock to the Cuban community here in South Florida, mostly in Miami-Dade, right? In their minds, this shouldn't be happening because obviously there is a dictatorship on the island. The situation in Cuba is worse than ever with health issues, so many different things, right? Unfortunately. But because the Cuban community has benefited from the Cuban Adjustment Act for decades, which has allowed for them to, after 1 year and 1 month of being in the U.S., be able to obtain permanent residency and then obviously become a U.S. citizen much quicker than any other immigrant group in U.S. history. They have this mentality of, I'm up here, other immigrants are down here. We're Americans, we're citizens, come legally, right? That's been the popular mentality for decades here in South Florida. Meanwhile, for people from my community, Hondurans, other Central Americans, Mexicans, people from South America, other people in the Caribbean, it's not a shock, right? Deportation in the history of Honduran immigration, for example, is something very normal. Hondurans have been getting deported back to Honduras for decades. Nothing new. But again, it's the difference in immigration enforcement that now has all come together. The lines have been blurred because now it's everyone. This administration has come after everyone, regardless of any former privileged status.
¿Por qué están arrestando personas inocentes que solo huyen de una dictadura, de una tiranía asesina comunista?
Tras la detención de la joven cubana Laura de la Caridad González Sánchez, líderes del movimiento anticomunista I-220A expresaron su apoyo.
Como movimiento legal en el estado de la Florida, necesitamos, por favor, que se tomen en cuenta que si no hemos cometido crimen, que tenemos nuestras vidas organizadas, nuestro asilo pendiente, que por favor no tenemos por qué vivir con este terror.
I will vote for Donald Trump. I will vote.
Raise your hand, come on.
For Donald Trump. Oh my God, I will vote.
Arriba.
I will vote for Donald Trump.
I want to thank Los Tres del Habanas. How did I do, Mercy? For their incredible performance.
Nosotros lo hicimos porque nosotros queríamos. A mí nadie me pagó un centavo. A mí nadie me dijo que esto iba a ser beneficioso, ni siquiera que iba a
Oh my God, I will vote. I will vote for Donald Trump. That's what y'all did. Those people didn't even get paid to do that. Crazy. The wordplay that the GOP specifically used in Florida, especially Miami, on Venezuelans and Cubans is unreal. They told you guys that they're only going after the criminals. You guys are the criminals. When you come to this country illegally, that's the crime. But what you do is you seek asylum because you're saying you're running away from a very bad government. But you still have to get here to seek asylum. And when you seek asylum, you give your name, where you're living, where you're working. That's how this works. So that's what they did. They didn't go around trying to find a bunch of illegal immigrants everywhere because that's difficult to do. Apart from the farms and the construction sites, it's hard to find illegal immigrants in the country. They don't leave a paper trail. But people that seek asylum do. And that's why they went to y'all houses in Miami and picked y'all up because they knew where you were at. Your paperwork wasn't completed. But hey, I will vote for Donald Trump. You voted for your people to get deported because he don't give a shit what you look like. Y'all could look white, you can have the proximity to whiteness, but you are from Cuba and he don't give a shit. So thoughts and deportations. Oh my God, I will vote. I will vote for Donald Trump. Y'all stand 10 toes down in your vote. Don't start bitching now.
Hey, y'all remember this? The I will vote for Donald Trump crowd? Remember them? Do you remember this video coming up right here?
Vote for Trump. Let's go. Vote for Trump. I will vote for Donald Trump.
Well, now look at this. Cubans are being deported from Florida in record numbers under Trump's second term. Even though many of them backed him, we know the Miami Cubans love to think that they are non-minorities. They love to think that they're better than every other Latino group. They love to think that they came here a certain way and F everybody else. And they very much love to vote Republican and love to vote against their interest. But not working out them so well. How many of them are saying I would vote for Donald Trump now? Because as you can see, they're getting deported like crazy. But remember, y'all was out here with this Cubans for Trump. Now, y'all out here like this. And this is why I will say every time, some of y'all minorities who be trying to act like y'all better than everybody else, meanwhile, half of y'all wouldn't be over here if it wasn't off the backs of black people and enslaved people, but I digress. You want to down every other group of people. A lot of y'all Cubans really can't stand black people. Y'all can't stand against other Latino groups. Y'all really think that y'all are the closest thing to whiteness and that you're going to be accepted and that you're this and that. And as you see, when it comes to Donald Trump, he doesn't care about anything that you have to say. He doesn't care that you voted for him or that your family members voted for him because he gonna round your ass up just like everybody else and show you that you are just like every other minority. He don't give a damn about you. Next time, vote the way that are in your interest, not against your interest.
Listen to this.
And I was shocked when I got to Ohio because I thought that I was... And then I got to Ohio and It was a tough time.
As a Cuban Dominican, I grew up in South Florida from ages 9 and up. I came here from Santo Domingo, and I never once thought I was white. Not once. And look at me. I know I'm perceived that way. I would get offended when teachers or students or whoever, parents, would say some dumbass shit. They'd find out I was from Santo Domingo and be like, oh, you're Dominican? I'm darker than you. Say stupid dumbass shit like that to me. And I knew I was never white. I always knew that. So Cuban, it's just so funny, man. Miami really is a special fucking place. If you're Cuban in Miami, you're white, but nowhere else, bitch, you ain't fucking white.
This is total curiosity, but did you guys ever seen the flights for Cuba? The luggages? How did they go? Like how much stuff these people that go to Cuba take? It's literally insane because they take things for their family members. Oops, look over there. This is all the Cuban session. I'm telling you, this is insane.
Hi. We've now entered the FAFO phase for Cubans. Yes, you heard me correctly. To an alarming surprise, Cubans in Florida are being deported at record numbers. Yes, Cubans, Republicans who voted for Trump, they came here under Biden, under amnesty. They did it the legal way. They're getting deported. I highly encourage you to check out an article in the New York Times. If you're brown, he's coming for you. It doesn't matter if you're here under amnesty, if you did it the right way. They don't care. So we've now entered this FAFO stage for Cubans. So they're doing it in record numbers in Florida. That's because a lot of them, that's where they live. So if you didn't know, Marco Rubio is Cuban. Yeah, he came here from Cuba. And so they're deporting them right now in record numbers. Remember when he deported Venezuelans and then he attacked Venezuela and captured their president and kidnapped him? And then, said that he cared about Venezuelans? Yeah, he doesn't care about you. So FAFO, Cubans for Trump, especially in Florida. Hi.
You know what's happening? And bendito Cubans, I feel sorry for some of them. But what they're doing now is that on my comment section, they're like, I am Cuban, but I am not that Cuban. I am not that Miami Cuban. Let's differentiate. And we do have to differentiate because the Cubans in New York City and New Jersey are quite different than the Miami Cubans. And I don't think people realize that. Yeah, there's still some Cubans in New Jersey and New York that voted for freaking Trump. But I believe the vast majority of those actually voted for Kamala Harris because they tell you that there's a distinction that I am not that Cuban. I am not Miami Cuban. And it's really sad because, we all lump them in. But the truth is, Miami Cubans are the worst. They're the worst. They are, you know what? They already know what they are. And they're definitely not for their people. So what do you think?
Jamaica just declined to load fuel onto Cuba's LPG tanker following new US sanctions that penalize any country supplying energy to Cuba. The sanctions mean if you help Cuba with fuel, you risk punishment from the US financial system. So Jamaica stepped back. Jamaica is dealing with hurricane damage right now, which makes energy security even more sensitive and shows how fragile this setup really is. Makes you question the timing also anyway. Right, here's why this matters. Cuba has already warned it is running low on crude. That affects planes, electricity, hospitals, and basic transport. Mexico has stepped in to help, but across the Caribbean, support has gone quiet. And this is where history matters, right? Because for decades, Cuba supported the region through doctors, disaster response, training, and technical support when small islands couldn't afford it. Jamaica relied on Cuban doctors for years, especially in rural areas, and thousands of Jamaicans were trained in Cuba when the system needed them. Now, guys, let's be clear. This is not about pretending Cuba is perfect, right? We'll put that to the side. Cuba has internal constraints, but sanctions are not about reform. They're about leverage. After the revolution,
Cuba nationalized land and industries owned by US interests and was met with long-term economic isolation. Cuba and Haiti are two of the only nations in the region to truly win freedom through revolution, and both have paid for it, seriously. And if that feels distant, look at Burkina Faso today. Reduce foreign military influence, reclaim resources, face pressure and sanctions, same pattern in different regions. Here's the risk, guys. Caribbean governments are calculating access to US banks, dollar clearing, tourism flows, credit lines, and trade preferences. Over 90% of the Caribbean energy is imported, which means pressure travels fast. Countries that help Cuba risk secondary sanctions, restricted access to US banks, higher borrowing costs, and quiet pressure on tourism and credit. These are the same constraints that are already being discussed quietly in policy circles, even if they never reach the headlines. And the lesson from that risk is long-term, right? As long as the Caribbean depends on imported fuel, pressure will always work. As long as they depend on the US dollar, pressure will always work. Venezuela oil kept Cuba afloat for years, but once pressure and production collapsed, that lifeline disappeared. So the strategy is simple, right? Short-term, quiet fuel swaps and port access to keep systems running. Medium-term, maybe CARICOM, coordinated fuel storage and joint procurement, so risk is shared. Long-term, transitioning into energy systems that cannot be switched off externally. This isn't about like doing the right thing for one another or being charitable. It's self-defense, because if we do not move as a bloc and control energy, food and supply chains, our politics can be overridden externally. Anyway, let's talk in the comment section. What are your thoughts?
Yes, Cubans are getting deported, but they are not getting deported back to Cuba. And these are not the Cubans who have entered the United States in the last few years. These are Cubans who have been in the U.S. since the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and at one point they were even lawful permanent residents. But because of their criminal history, they lost their immigration status and were ordered deported. But because of the political situation between the United States and Cuba, they were actually never deported to Cuba. And instead, they were placed on what's called order of supervision, where they typically go once a year for a quote-unquote check-in, and they meet with an ICE officer, and the ICE officer makes sure that they don't have any other crimes going on, and they're abiding by the terms of their check-in, and they're able to apply for a work authorization. Since Cubans were not accepted by Cuba to be deported, they have remained in the United States for decades under the order of supervision. But now, since the Trump administration is pushing hard this third country removals, Cubans are now being deported to various locations, including Mexico. You're seeing Cubans go to their ICE OSUP check-in appointment and be detained, and they're spending a few weeks in Chrome and then being transferred over to Texas, and then from Texas they're being placed on a bus and then deported to the southern part of Mexico. Shame, because I think if ICE had told them what the plan was, these people could at least prepare for it, but sadly they have absolutely no idea that this is even coming to them. And now they've been in the U.S. for 50, 60 years with relatives and businesses and families and ties to the U.S. and just being dropped off in another country with no ID, no money, and no resources.
Latinos, doesn't matter where you are, Mexico, Cubanos, Argentina, everything, any kind of Latino you can possibly think of, always have thought that the lighter skin you are, the closest to proximity of white that you can be. And the unfortunate part is most Cubans are light-skinned, so they always think that they get a free fucking pass because they're somehow light-skinned enough, but they're never white-skinned enough. And not to mention that Cuba was a fucking dictatorship country, so it makes perfect sense that they want some fascist leader to go ahead and run the country. And not to mention they were colonized by Spain, and they have colorism like a motherfucker. And the internalized racism that they have, because Afro-Cubanos will literally say that they are white without like hesitating at all. I mean, I lived in New York for a very long time, and the Cubanos who think that they're literally white are fascinating to me because they literally feel as if they are the exception to the rule, but yet they do not know that obviously they were enslaved by Spain, and that they're not only Latino, but most of them are Afro-Cubanos or Afro-Latinos. So like, it's just fucking wild. That's why.
When system expand, they expand. When system tightening, it tightens. And when you build momentum around cracking down broadly, the net doesn't magically skip certain zip code. For some Cuban family, the realization has been jarring, emotional, confusing, but it forces a hard question. Did we understand what was being promised? Or did we believe we would be exemption? That's not about mocking anyone. It's about something very human. We all tend to believe politics won't hurt us. We all think consequences are distant until they are not. At the end of the day, this isn't just about Cuban. It's not about Trump. It's about how politics hits differently when it becomes personal. It's easy to support tough politics when they feel abstract, when they feel like numbers, headlines, statistics. It's harder when it's your neighbor, your cousin, someone from your church, someone from your family. Immigration enforcement is complex. It's layered. It affects different communities in different ways. But one thing history shows over and over again is that systems don't check your rally attendance. Politics don't scan your voting record. Political loyalty doesn't guarantee political protection. It doesn't make anyone foolish. It makes them human. People vote based on fear, hope, identity, history, and belief, especially communities shaped by trauma like many Cuban Americans who flew authoritarian regimes. That context matters. But so what does this lesson us? When you support broad enforcement, you're supporting broadly. If you cheer for the net, you can't be shocked when the net catches widely. And maybe this moment opens up a deeper conversation, not about party loyalty. It's about empathy, about whether immigration policy should be driven by punishment or by reform, about whether communities see themselves in each other or only as exception. So the real question isn't just, did people misunderstood the policy? It's also, what kind of immigration system do we actually want? One built on fear or one built on clarity and fairness? Drop your thoughts below respectfully. Let's talk like an adult. Immigration is too real, too personal, and too human to reduce to slogan. See you in my next video.